introduce folks. Normally the introducer would be the president of the league, and she couldn't be here this evening, but I don't have much to say except for welcome and thanks to, or maybe you're doing that, Logan Temple AME Zion Church. It's hosting the forum today. And let me turn things over to Madison Keevy, and she will take it from here.
Hi everyone. Hello, hello. Thank you for having me on this Thursday. I'm so glad that the rain has finally stopped today, so we were all able to get here with probably a little more ease than we've gotten to places through the rest of the week. So I am Madison Keevy. I'm an anchor at WATE 6 on your side. I'm so excited to be here. I'll also be the moderator for tonight's event, and I've got my notes, my script, so we're gonna be good. It's not quite a teleprompter, but I'm going to make it work. Of course, we are so excited to have these amazing candidates for school board here, and I'm going to go through. Some are not joining us tonight, so I just kind of want to give an idea of everyone. Mike McMillan, District 8, he's actually sick tonight, so he won't be here, but he will have a representative here after the debate that can answer questions and talk on his behalf, so we wish him a speedy recovery. John Mead from District 2 has a conflict tonight, but here are folks that will be participating. We're so excited. Jennifer Owen from District 2, Daniel Watson from District 3, Tony Norman from District 3, Adam Brown from District 8, and Michael Daugherty from District 8. So we're very excited to have these candidates here with us tonight. Now please remember that in the primary election, you may only vote for a candidate in your district. And if you don't know your district, you can find it on GoVoteTN by entering your address. So I welcome all of you to this forum as we begin, and this is on behalf of the following nonpartisan organizations. I want to make sure I get everyone. 100 Black Women of Knoxville, Centro Hispano, East Tennessee Professional Journalists Society, Knox County Education Coalition, Knoxville Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, Inc., and the Knoxville Urban League Young Professionals. The League of Women Voters, Knoxville, Knox County, of course, the NAACP, and the National Panhellenic Council. We're so grateful for the teamwork and the support, and of course, our thanks to the Logan Temple here at AME Zion Church for allowing us to use this facility tonight. This is wonderful. And of course, thank you to all of the volunteers who made this event possible. I know there's waters hidden everywhere for all of the candidates, for myself. Those kinds of things are amazing. I will now read the ground rules and procedures, and then we'll begin. So, display of campaign materials. In order to maintain a nonpartisan atmosphere, the LWV board members have decided that no candidate or audience member may display or wear campaign materials, pens, hats, t-shirts, etc. until after the forum is over. Audience participation, of course, members of the audience are encouraged to submit questions for consideration to be presented for the candidate's response. Throughout the forum, everyone should refrain from responding in any manners to the candidates. No applause, cheering, booing, or any other responses. Candidate participation. Candidates should focus on issues raised by each question, speak only during the time allotted, and avoid referring to other candidates. Now there's a note, if in the judgment of the moderator, specific reference is made to another candidate, the moderator, myself, may award 30 seconds of response to that other candidate. Candidates' opportunity to speak. Of course, the order of candidate opportunity to respond will alternate according to an established procedure. The first candidate to speak will, I guess, be Jennifer, and then we'll move on this way towards the end. And we'll then proceed with the person to her left, his or her left, of course, her. So you'll have opening words, and a timekeeper will monitor adherence to the time limits of opening words, response to questions, and then those closing remarks. None of the candidates have received any advance notice of these questions. Instead, questions have been submitted in writing by the audience, by those that are here during this forum. Volunteers will move around and be collecting. If you think of any as we're moving forward, please raise your hand and a volunteer will deliver and pick up that card from you when your question is on it. And before the questions are shared, they're screened by a committee for relevance to the position, importance to the audience in general, and tone, as well as to remove bias or avoid any repetition. All the candidates will have the opportunity to respond to every question. Responses should be confined to the issues that are raised by that question. Now, WATE 6 on your side, we are streaming this event, so if you have friends, family that are not able to be here tonight, you can tell them that they can go and watch and be part of democracy here at work. Of course, after the forum, candidates can share materials with the audience by placing them on the table outside the auditorium. And as moderator, I may interrupt the proceedings to enforce the guidelines and the format as we move forward. And we'll begin. So we'll begin our opening remarks with Jennifer.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer Owen. I am currently the district representative for District 2 in Knox County, and for 23 years I was a teacher in Tennessee, and so I have some unique experience to bring to the board as a related arts teacher. I taught music in Knox County for 18 of those years, and so looking at the arts and looking at how important those are to our students and how testing has taken that away a great deal is very important to me, and that's something that I hope you will also support as we move forward. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Tony Norman. I taught in the school system for 30 years, 20 years as a high school teacher at Farragut High School, 10 at West High School, retired from the school system and was elected to county commission for 2 terms from the same district, from District 3. And then most recently I was elected to the school board, so I've served school board here for the first term. As far as some kind of campaign slogan, I guess, I've developed a bit of one, and it would be, we need to get out of the way of our teachers. There's a lot of things that we're doing that just tend to interfere with their work. So, that's it for now. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Watson. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Restoration House. First, I just want to say thank you to Logan and Zion for hosting us. I mean, a church with such tremendous history, been here 152 years, and we're absolutely honored to be here in this space tonight. So, my daughter is with me. She didn't want me to point her out, but she's over at Carnes Middle School. My wife has her master's in education and has been doing long-term stints in Knox County schools for years now. I've got 3 kids, 2 of which are in Knox County schools. And over the last 12 years, my wife and I have been investing in the lives of low-income single mothers and their children because we grew up with single mothers. And so after 12 years of helping invest in individual lives and individual families, I wanted to see what I could do to help impact the system that impacts all of our families. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name's Adam Brown. I'm running for the 8th District School Board spot. Danielle, I'd like to thank everybody for allowing us to be here tonight. A little bit about me. I'm married with 4 kids, ranging in ages from 9 months to 17 years old. So I've got a big variety there, and all in the public school systems, except the 9-month-old, of course. Yeah, so I worked for the sheriff's office here in Knox County for 16 and a half years. I left there right before the birth of my daughter 9 months ago. That's when she was born. And I'm running for school board because I want to see positive change. I want to push us forward. I want to raise our educational levels for our children, not just academically, but in CTE and trade programs. I think we need to raise that level, let our teachers teach and do what they were trained to do so that they can push those kids in the right direction. We got to do everything we can to get them prepared for life after, you know, the elementary school, middle school, and high school. So I just want to push forward a positive change.
Hello, I'm Leon Dougherty, and I thank you for putting this forum on. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived in Knox County for over 50 years. I went to school in Knox County. I graduated from the University of Tennessee. I'm a retired teacher. I taught social studies in middle and high school for over 30 years. My wife, Lisa, is also a retired elementary teacher. I have 3 adult children, and they all attended Knox County schools. Three grandchildren who are attending or will soon be attending Knox County schools. So I have a vested interest in the future of Knox County schools. I always told my government students that it was the responsibility of a good citizen to vote always and to be involved in the community, and I'm trying to be involved and be an advocate for all our kids in Knox County by running for the school board and hopefully being elected. Thank you.
All right, our first question, and we'll just continue in the same order as the opening statements. The question: each month, school board members attend 3 or more public meetings, evaluate and vote on dozens of questions, meet with constituents, meet with administrators, visit schools in their district, and more. How will you find the many hours per week needed to fulfill your responsibilities as a board member?
This is my full-time job. This is what I do, about 60 hours a week. And so finding the time isn't extremely difficult because this is what I have devoted my full-time to for our students. I meet with constituents whenever and wherever they ask. If they call and ask me to come to their school or to meet them out west, wherever they happen to be, wherever they are available, I can do that. If they need to text or call in the middle of the night, we can do that too. So I try to be very available whenever someone might need me.
Yes, I agree with the questioner's position. It is a very time-consuming job. I'm retired, and so it's my job to do this. I think probably in terms of the most time-consuming part would probably be around the preparation that goes into the board's agenda. There is quite a bit of information to go through, attachment after attachment after attachment, and so just a lot of stuff. But I've found it to be, very doable, and so I think I'm accomplishing the task most of the time. Thank you.
So I'm full-time at the Restoration House, and I'm also a founder. And the great thing about where I'm at in terms of my life, I took a long time to count the cost of running. Last year, my wife and I and our kids, we took a 2-month sabbatical. My kids have only known Restoration House. We live there as well. So we left town for 2 full months, and over that 2 months, we had 1 3-minute phone call about Restoration House. The reality is we've gotten to a place as an organization where we have a tremendous team around us. I've got a staff of 9 people, and we've got a great foundation. And my wife has been for this run as a candidate even before I was. And so she's very supportive. My kids have been very supportive, and I'm looking forward to working hard and putting in all the time that's needed. So, thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's about dedication and having the passion to do it. Finding the time, there is a lot to go in this. I've been researching and trying to keep up with everything that's on their agendas and things like that, and finding that time is big. But you have to be dedicated and passionate to do it, and that's what I'm bringing to the table where I will find time. As far as meeting with constituents and things like that, I have a desire to set up teacher meetings on a regular basis. That way we know what's going on in their schools, and we don't have to wait on them to call. We can just have regular meetings, but be available if they do call for any emergency things that may come up. But hitting that front lines and doing that to begin with, that's big on my book, just so we know what's going on in the schools. And the same thing for the community and the parents. I would like to see regular scheduled meetings in our community at our high schools or wherever we can find a place to gather community and parents on a regular basis to hear from them outside of anything that may come up during the week on a day-to-day basis.
I am a retired teacher, and after my retirement, I did spend a lot of time helping take care of my mom with a brutal bout of cancer. As many of you know, I've probably been through that, and she passed away 18 months ago. But I'd always planned on running for school board after retirement and being an advocate for our kids. I think one of the responsibilities of a school board member is to get out in the community and have regular meetings, not just in the schools in my district, but the schools all across Knox County. And I think we need to be out there talking to students, to teachers, to school employees, to everybody, and listening and informing them. And I think it's a responsibility of school board members to get with state legislators, county commission, and inform them and be aware of the legislation that's pending on education, and I have the time to do that. Thank you.
All right, the next question. As a school board member, how will you determine when to trust the recommendations of KCS staff? Oh, yes, we're starting with Tony this time, sorry.
I think that the staff obviously has a lot of experience. Most of the staff that we probably rely on, they've been in the classroom for a significant amount of time. They have close contact with the schools, the principals, the teachers. And so I rely on the staff's recommendations. But simultaneously, I've got to take into account the whole county. And so, you know, it's the taxpayers who pay the bills. We've got a big issue right now with the AJ Building TVA Tower. And I don't think maybe the recommendation that's coming from the staff is very wise right now. So it's just one, you know, that's one big issue that I disagree with. So you know, you balance it.
Yeah, I would agree that it's completely about balance. So I'm on the other side of the coin as the executive director of the nonprofit. There we go. Is that better? So I'm on the other side of the coin as the executive director of a nonprofit, and my board has to look for me for recommendations. And the reality is I'm really thankful that over the last 12 years they told me no a bunch of times because sometimes I'm wrong. And to me, it's about, we'll just put the red one over there. To me, it's really about a partnership, and you got to have mutual respect and trust between one another to advance the mission. And I think we have to be listening to our staff. I think we have to be trusting them and what they're hearing on the ground and what they see day to day. But I think we also have to be a great listener out in the community, and we have to be listening to our parents. We have to be listening to our teachers. We have to be listening to our students, and making sure that we're bringing a balanced voice to the table, and being willing to push back and ask the tough questions when needed.
And for me with this question, what would make me determine whether to rely on their recommendation, it would multi-prong here, because I think it depends on the issue and what's at hand. Because taking it for face value, I think any issue that would come to me, you have to figure out what the background of it is, what it would affect, how it's going to affect, you know, what the recommendation is, how it's going to affect things more down the road, not just right in front of you. Now, our staff, they're our frontline staff, teachers, anybody in the schools that are there daily. So I think that their opinion and their recommendations hold value, and we have to do our part as board members to investigate that, see how it's going to affect the bigger picture. So any evaluation or recommendation they have, I would take it into consideration and just investigate it fully to give a good answer on moving forward or not.
And I hate to be a broken record, but balance is a good word. But I think that you need to, rely on your people that are professional educators, and their opinion. You need to feedback from everybody. And I think it's the, as I said before, it's the responsibility of school board members to do that and to be active and be out in the schools talking to administrators and talking to parents and again talking to the superintendent and the support staff. So.
I think we're talking about a couple of things here. One is the trust that we have with our staff, and another is the decision making that goes with that trust. So there are times when we can trust that our staff is giving us the best information that they have, but when we also might have additional information to consider. So one thing that helps a lot with that is when we require transparency and we require that all of the information we are supposed to consider is on our agenda when it is supposed to be. When we require that all of those attachments are there, when we require that we get the information that we need, then that helps with that trust process. It also helps with us being informed so that we have the information, they have the information, the public has the information. Often there are issues that the public may understand some tiny little piece that we need to know about, and having that transparency makes the difference.
All right, this next question we'll start with Daniel. Because of inadequate funding, our schools lose great teachers for positions in better paying districts. Schools are not adequately cleaned because custodian pay hasn't kept up. KCS has fewer than one social worker per 2,000 students when national standards call for 1 per 250 students. As a board member, what will you do to increase the school funding?
Yeah, I think there's two issues. Obviously, we don't determine. I mean, that's part of what we have to work with. But I think we have to do some work in our state around the BEP. You know, Knoxville's constantly losing out when it comes to that calculation. Right now, I think we're losing somewhere around $70 million per year that we should be gaining from the BEP. And many would argue that the BEP, even in its calculations, isn't enough. And also, we need to be making sure that we're working as well as we can with our county commission, who really holds a lot of our purse strings locally. Right now, I think a lot of that has to do with ensuring that our county commissioner knows how money's spent and that the school board and the school system is not being frivolous. I think that's where some of the arguments are, is that maybe you're mismanaging or misspending funding. But I think we need to make sure that they know how those funds are being spent and continue to advocate hard for those additional dollars.
Yeah, so for me, it's the allocation. The budget it's huge. You know, it's almost half $500 million more, and I think, like Daniel said, the allocation of those funds and seeing where some things are being spent. And I'm still learning a lot about the budget and diving in to see where things, go. But I think we really need to take a look in each one of our schools and get reports about what they need and how many people they need and how it's affecting our children, because overall, that's what this should be about. The decisions that we make should be about how is it ultimately going to affect our children, whether it be hiring more teachers or losing more teachers. So I think that we need to address that with the county commission, the mayor's office, that if we need more money, we're going to either have to move around funds or request more funds to get the personnel that we need to teach and educate our children.
Well, in keeping up with how much our state spends per student, the last time I've looked, it's ranked from 46th to 51st if you count Washington, D.C., and that's not good. So I think one of the big jobs of the school board and Knox County Commission is to get with our state legislatures and inform them the need for additional funding. I know that the 8th District does not want a tax increase, and I would not be for that, but I think that there are a lot of ways that we can reduce some costs and bureaucracy and also eliminate some programs that have proven to not be very effective for our kids.
Thank you. First, let's take a look at some of the numbers that were in that question. I believe it said 1 per 2,500. That is not the number that we have in Knox County. That is what the state provides funding for. So Tennessee provides funding for 1 counselor per 2,500 students. We actually have, I believe, 1 per 250. So the difference there is huge if we are looking at what they provide and what we provide. So the difference in that funding comes from County Commission. That comes from our general fund and what they provide. Helping our legislators understand how deeply those kinds of positions impact our students is hugely important. Our students in schools that have counselors readily available say that that's one of the most important things they have. Students who feel that they need more counselors make that very, very clear. They say if we had more, we would feel much more comfortable.
We have a minute and a half to do this? 1 minute? That's incredibly short for one to try to take this on. I think all these things were, everybody had something good to say about this, and it definitely applies. I'd like to focus on the teacher aspect of it. And so what I've come to find out is it's about keeping teachers is not so much about their salaries. It's really not. What it's about is their working conditions. Now, that is not to say we don't need to work on all these, increasing sources of revenue. Absolutely. But we need to really focus on what teachers need. And if you ask them, many of them will be more concerned about what's going on, the pressures and the extra things that they're having to do.
We're getting lost.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, the next question starts with Adam. All right, so the question. 9.89 of Knox County students are Hispanic, but 18% or fewer of Knox County teachers are Hispanic. Oh, it's 1%, excuse me. This is handwriting and I can't ever read anything. Okay, but 1% or fewer of Knox County teachers are Hispanic. What, if anything, do you plan to do about this?
Now, that's a great question. And I think what we need to do is we need to find those issues. Now, that's brought up. If there's a gap in there, we need to bridge that gap. And that's why it's so important to be in those schools for board members, to speak with the staff, just to overall and see what their spread of kids is. That way we know that versus the teacher. So I think finding that gap and knowing that that gap is there, then we need to address it. And if there's a language barrier or something that would build up that, then we just need to address it and figure out how to solve it and try to get some more support there for that.
Well, I think we need to look at other school systems in the state and in the area, see what they're doing to recruit folks in terms of Hispanic and so forth, and just overall, we need to do more in recruiting and retaining all teachers, and looking at raising pay, looking at the benefits, and making this a place where we don't have, I think right now, 15 to 20% of our teachers are first or second year teachers. So we need to do a better job and find ways to do that.
Thank you. To be able to bring in more diversity in the teacher staff, in our overall support professional staff, we have to be able to bring in more applicants in general. We have to bring in more people overall. This isn't a problem that is unique to Knox County. This is a problem that is all over our state. We don't have folks who want to go into this profession. We have had a decade of treating our education professionals really, really horribly. The legislature has treated teachers badly. They have made fun of teachers publicly. It's really been demoralizing, and students see that. And to be able to have a more diverse workforce, we need to have people who want to go into it. And when we treat folks that way, we don't get people who want to do that job.
Absolutely, diversity is a good thing to have within a staff. But in my experience, I've never failed to be amazed at how many teachers love what they do, love the kids they work with. And I just don't think that is as big of an issue as a lot of times we make it. The people that I've worked with, it just does not matter. Now, it probably would matter to some of the kids to see some of the staff that looks more like them. I'm sure that might be more comforting to them. But overall, I'm just so impressed with our teachers and how they love what they do and how they love the kids they work with.
I think it's a really important question, and I think it's not just an important question for the Latino community, but also for the African American community. We got to remember that after Brown versus Education, that even though our students were desegregated, our teachers were not. 38,000 African American teachers in the South lost their jobs after desegregation, and the reality is we've never recovered from that. And so what we know from study after study after study is when students have teachers that are the racial mirrors, where they see themselves in that teacher and they see that themselves being successful through that teacher, that it improves test scores, that it reduces suspensions and discipline problems. And I don't know that I have the solution for it. I think part of it has to do with some of the other folks have said around just getting more folks in teaching positions in general, because we are losing a lot of our teachers. But we do need to make a concerted effort to make sure that we're bringing in more diversity and inclusion. And a part of that's probably also celebrating the culture of our teachers and making sure that we have good diversity in the way that we represent in our schools.
Yep, this next question begins with Michael. What is your stance on Project Grad?
I think it's been very effective and since it started, and I really would like to just continue as it is.
That's a very broad question, so I'm not quite sure where to start. Project Grad has been a hugely important piece of the lives of many of our families. Several weeks, well, it's not been several weeks, it's been a couple of weeks ago, when we had a sudden closure for weather, and some of our students weren't able to get their food backpacks. Our Fulton Project Grad person, when I contacted her, she was able to drop what she was doing, go to the school, get the backpacks put together, and we got them delivered to students so that they would have snacks and food for the weekend. And that's something that Project Grad does for students without even thinking about it. She took time to call every family, make sure that their address was correct and that we would be able to get everything to them. And having that person there who has that connection with students and that trust with families makes a huge difference in their lives, not just now, but for years to come.
Project Grad has been very important to Knox County Schools for a long time, and it's served to work to make to help kids see opportunities, prospects that they probably never would have really felt that they had. And so I think the program is very, very good, very sound in terms of its mission. I do think, though, as we found, sometimes we have to we got to look at things from a budget perspective. And certainly the year before last, we looked at it pretty critically, and there were some things that needed to be done and needed to be reframed, restructured. And I think they did that. I think Grad did, to their credit. So I think they're doing a good job, and they've changed some of their things to their credit. Thank you.
Project Grad has been a staple in our community for a number of years now, and I have tremendous respect for Ronnie and her team. I recently looked at the numbers, and since they started, 546 minority college graduates come through Project Grad. Also, I believe the rate in Fulton of graduates from high school at the time when they started was 50%. It's significantly increased. Now, we also have to remember that they're going through a reorganization with the Knoxville Education Foundation. And as they combine with Great School Partnership in a different kind of organizational structure, I'm hopeful for Project Grad, and I hope they continue to do great work. And I think we need to be conscious about how that restructuring is going to impact not only Great Schools Partnership, but also Project Grad, and hope that we can continue to deliver great services in partnership, because collaboration is really important in Knox County schools. Knox County schools can't do it all on its own. We don't have enough funding, and so great collaboration is going to be important moving forward.
I think Project Grad is a great operation. Anything that helps children succeed, we don't need to frown upon. I was in a program when I went through high school called Upper Bound. It's a pre-college program to push you, to give you, we went and stayed on UT campus during the summers to see what it felt like to go to extra classes, so I was going to school in the summer. Project Grad, it's kind of along the same lines, and I'm grateful that that program is there, and we need to make sure that it stays in and try to help it grow, because, like I said, anything that's going to help kids get to where they want to go or where they don't know that they can go, we have to give them every opportunity they can, put every tool in their toolbox to succeed. And Project Grad and other projects and programs like that do that for our children.
Goes back to Jennifer. This next one, we'll start with Jennifer. Yep. The question: the school board recently rejected removing specific language protecting LGBT students from bullying. How can the school board further enhance support for LGBT students?
I think we need to look at why we did not change that language. When we look at laws from different states, how the laws of the state impact our school policies are different from state to state. So if we look at Georgia school policies or Alabama school policies, they're going to happen very differently than ours because their state laws are worded differently. And we did not keep the language that some folks wanted because gender and sex definitions in our state law made it very tricky, so that we could have had some very far-reaching unintended consequences. In our state law, sex encompasses gender, but gender does not encompass sex. So had we changed the language to gender instead of sex, then there could have been some far-reaching discrimination that needed to be protected. Not protected discrimination, protect the students.
This question kind of reminds me of doing math in public. I don't think I should be doing that, but just simply put, our teachers, again, love our kids. Our staffs love these kids. They don't know anything about, or if they do know about some kind of sensitive issue regarding LGBT, whatever. I think that we all value each individual kid regardless of what they're dealing with, and they deal with a lot of stuff. And so I just look at it as, let's equip our staff, let's educate our staff about issues like this. Let's make sure that everybody's supportive. We're all trying to help these kids grow through these difficult times.
Having experienced a lot of trauma as a kid, growing up with a mom that was married and divorced 6 times, an abusive household, I'm concerned about the level of a trauma that our kids are experiencing as a whole. And I know that's especially true for our LGBTQ students. The reality is many of them are still ostracized and are not comfortable in the spaces that they're in. And the reality is school should never be a place where you feel that. And so I think we need to be very intentional about making sure that we're not being discriminatory, unintentionally or otherwise. And I think we need to protect our students in that way, all of our students that way, and make sure that our children feel comfortable, because if you aren't comfortable, you're not going to learn. You cannot learn when you are feeling a sense of trauma. So I think that's the #1 priority, is making sure that we're putting our kids first in all ways, that way they can learn.
What we need to do, in my opinion, bullying is a big issue, always has been and always will be until we decide to do something different about it. No matter what the background is or what the verbiage says, or because the law says this, that we can't. But that doesn't mean that we can't change how we treat people. What our teachers and our staff do in those schools, we really need to address the bullying issue and make sure, like David said, that everybody's comfortable. Whether it says it has to be done a certain way, as long as we're reaching out, being equal and fair, and treating everybody the same, making sure that they're all getting treated the same. I just feel like it's a big issue. I'm a big supporter of anti-bullying, and I just think it needs to be addressed and make sure that we're doing it the best we can with it.
I think we do need to just try to educate ourselves better and just rethink things and like everybody else said, be sensitive to the needs of all students and look at what's being done in other parts of the state, other parts of the country, and just see what we can do best to help these kids.
And the next question, we'll start with Tony. Yep. All right, the question: would you be supportive of efforts to implement comprehensive sex education in public schools rather than emphasizing abstinence-based sex education?
You want to go first? Well, I think that sex education is important. I really do. I think a lot of times the school functions to help raise these kids, and some parents don't cover all the bases that really need to be covered, and so sex education is one thing that absolutely we should be about. Let's see, the second part of that question, what was it?
Would you be supportive of efforts to implement comprehensive sex education rather than emphasizing abstinence-based sex education?
Well, just comprehensive sex education. I think that that's important. I don't want to diminish abstinence, but I think that I'll just say that sex education comprehensively.
Yeah, so the question is about emphasizing, and I think abstinence should always be the goal. There's so much that comes when young people become sexually active. Coming from a household that was very sexually active, I got no sex education at home. So I think although abstinence is certainly a goal, I don't think that's what we need to only be talking to our kids about. We do need to be comprehensive in our sex education. And I think we also need to continue to give parents the right to determine when and how they want their kids to be involved in that. But the reality is our culture has grown more promiscuous, and I think we need to be helping our students know how to navigate those waters and how to protect themselves and to be safe. And I think we would be doing a disservice to our young people if we didn't help them fully understand that. Thank you.
I'm gonna go kind of hit this a little bit on everybody. I'm gonna stay with the promoting abstinence. As times change, we do have to change them, but on some stay true to. And with everything that goes on in schools and the way times are changing and the things that kids are faced with now, I think there needs to be an outlet there for them to talk to somebody if they need to. But as far as promoting it, the comprehensive version, I'm going to say that the sex education and abstinence is kind of where I would fall in that.
Stressing abstinence is important, but there's definitely need for sex education, and that should be a priority.
Yep, you've already got the mic, you knew.
I could skip it. That'd be okay.
I'm sorry.
This is an issue that the pendulum swings back and forth on often. How sex education was addressed in Knox County just as recently as 2011 was more comprehensive. And then there was a huge push to change that to more abstinence-based. So I think looking at any kind of program, especially something that impacts our students' bodies every day, is something that needs to be balanced. They need to have a wide range of information. They need to have all the knowledge that they can possibly have so that they can use it wisely.
Okay. The next question. What goals for Knox County Schools encouraged you to run for school board?
What current goals of Knox County Schools?
It says, what goals for Knox County Schools encouraged you to run for school board? Goals for Knox County Schools.
Okay. This is humming pretty good. You can hear me? Okay, great. So a couple things that I'm really passionate about as I start thinking about Knox County Schools is definitely giving the community that I live in. And I live in a mixed income community, which means we have low income families, we have middle income families, and across the strata. And 22 of our families are single parent families, all of which are low income. And I also, as I said earlier, grew up in a traumatic household. And I think we are demanding more and more of our teachers. And part of that comes from the trauma that our communities are experiencing, that we're walking alongside children who are experiencing phenomenal things in their homes, things that we should never have to experience. And I think we need to be fully equipping our teachers and our educators and those engaging with our students about how to walk alongside children who have experienced trauma. And I actually don't think it's good enough to be trauma informed. I know that's kind of the buzzword, but we need to become trauma responsive. Me just being informed about my trauma is not enough. I need people who can help respond to that. Because, again, if I'm still feeling that trauma, I'm not learning.
The goals that encourage me to run is I truly enjoy and have a passion for serving the community. And I feel that our schools, especially in District 8, because that's where I'm running at, I feel like the representation that I could give them would go above and beyond whatever I can imagine. Because I truly just want to give back. I want to assist people when I can. I've got kids, one child is getting ready to graduate the school system, and two that are in it, and one is coming up in it. And I want to do all that I can and be a better support system for our District 8 schools, and to put a little spot back in them, just to try to help them grow. Because if you look at statistically, you know, our schools sometimes don't seem to be growing the way they should on the education level. And with kids coming up, my children especially, and all children, I think they all deserve to be pushed a little bit more and to have a higher chance and capabilities to do things. So I just truly want to be a representative for our community, the community that I grew up in, that I love, and I just want to be that representation for them.
Well, I want to provide an excellent education for all our kids, and recruiting and retaining great teachers, and talking about goals would be one of my top priorities. Reducing class sizes, I think has to be also very important. Less emphasis. Also in the evaluation of teachers. I think with the increase in stress and anxiety in our kids, we need more mental health professionals to counsel our students and to be available to give them support.
I want to go back to when I first ran. One of the things that I was seeing was a lot, can you hear me? Okay. Was a lot of focus on one specific thing. We need to focus more just on math. We need to focus more just on reading. We need to focus more on just helping kids bubble in tests on answer sheets. That's not what we need to be doing. Comprehensive is the word I would go back to. We need to be looking at all the pieces and how they work together, not just focusing in on this one reading score on this one day. We've gotten into a loop of data collection for the sake of data collection. We have people in our schools whose entire job is to look at data. to collect data from teachers, to aggregate that data, to go back to the teachers and have a meeting about the data, and then to go back the next week and compare the data again. That's not what we should be doing. Our teachers are trained professionals who can make many of those decisions for their students in their classrooms without having constant data collection.
I guess our primary goal in schools is academic achievement, academic excellence, and certainly that's where most of the focus would be. Kids are different. There's all kinds of kids. There's some kids that are not going to be academics. I think that we have lost in the system our ability to address the opportunities that kids need that are not academics. They need the basics, but they need much more in terms of vocational education and vocational opportunities. The other big thing is literacy, and especially literacy at the third grade level. We need to focus on that. We need to figure out how we can really help kids get through the third grade, reading on grade level. It's critical for their whole lives.
All right, this next question will begin with Adam. The question: how do you think the state's proposed voucher program might affect Knox County schools, and are you for or against vouchers?
So what I'm learning about vouchers is, I don't know exactly the whole proposal, but we don't need to do anything that's going to take away from our public education. I understand it's just, you're giving kids an opportunity, and we've got to give kids every choice they can to succeed. I think there's a better way besides that would be taking away money that needs to go to our public schools. If the federal government and the state can create a voucher program funded on its own that's not going to affect the public school system, that'd be great. But I just don't want to see our schools that still need more funding to lose funding to those voucher programs. But on the flip side of it, if a child has an opportunity to go to a better school to get a better education, and that's the parent's choice on what they want to do, how do we say, as board or anybody else, that that's not a right thing to do, you know, just because we don't agree with them? We can agree to disagree. So I feel that parents should have that choice. It's just, for me right now, it's a very in-between area, I guess I could say.
And looking at vouchers, I'm totally against vouchers. You look at our state, it ranks in the bottom in terms of expenditure for students. We do not need to be or spending public education money on vouchers. And I'm against charter schools also. I think it looks here in Knox County with Emerald Academy. I think there are good intentions there, but again, it's draining much needed funds from other public schools. And from looking at Emerald, you have I think 41 students per teacher, and as I was talking about earlier, class sizes are very instrumental, especially in lower grade levels. And again, totally against school vouchers.
Hey, I could do this one for a couple of days and not finish. We have had voucher programs throughout the United States for 50 years, for half a century. 50 years of evidence that they do not help students. We have evidence that in many cases their performance is actually worse in voucher programs. We have evidence of fraud. We have evidence of mismanagement. We have multitudinous evidence to show that they do not do what they claim they do. The idea that, well, Tennessee can do it better than anybody who has tried for 50 years is ludicrous, especially when they're doing the exact same thing that they've done in other states that have failed. It's taking a massive amount of money and diverting it to private corporations. Public funds should be for the public good. And regardless of whether those were originally earmarked for education or not, when we take public funds and divert them to private corporations, we're not working for the public good.
I'm not in favor of vouchers, but I probably want to take a little different take on this from most. We live in a state where our last 2 governors have been voucher proponents. Our last 8 years of legislative effort has somewhat of a majority of the legislators who are also proponents. Vouchers are coming. They're going to be part of the landscape. I really think that we should not be quite so vocally oppositional about it. I think, like Jennifer says, they're going to die. They're going to die of their own failures. So anyway, politically, I think that we ought to be smart about how we address vouchers.
I understand the basic argument for vouchers. I think the basic argument is the intent of let's try to give somebody an opportunity who doesn't already have one. But if you look at what we're doing in Tennessee, I'm not going to be very politically correct when I say this, it's a hot mess. That's not happening well. And also, I think from a fundamental standpoint, we don't need to be bringing in competition into the common good. So, you know, what I've heard is that if we have vouchers, then everybody will get better because there's more competition and things like that. But the reality is when you have competition like that, there's losers, right? Because you got to have winners, you got to have losers. And the reality is we may have a few more winners with vouchers, but the reality is we're going to have a tremendous amount of losers in that situation because I think we're going to be writing off whole communities through that voucher system. And we certainly don't need to be diverting our funding into a system that's going to create maybe a few more winners, but also write off whole communities.
Well, that's where we started. I'm like waiting for the next, okay, hello. Okay, and so we're back to Jennifer again. Knox County Schools.
I think it's moved on.
We're back at, oh, okay, excuse me. Wow, I thought I was keeping such good track. I've got my little notes up here. Okay. Knox County Schools suspends minority children, low-income children, and disabled children about 3 times as often than white middle-class children. What do you believe is the reason for these disparities, and how will you, as a board member, work to correct them?
Well, looking at the disparities, task force, I think as a school board member, we need to constantly be in contact with them and look at their data. We need to look at visit administrators, visit the schools and find out what they're doing in terms of suspension and intervention. And obviously statistics show low income areas there's definitely a higher risk of single parents and so forth. And we need to do more counseling, and it's a lot better to pay money in the front end rather than pay about 10 times of it on the back end.
This is an area where we have data that says something, but we're not 100% sure what it says. We know that it says there are more suspensions, but we've asked for information for about 3 years, I think, that we haven't yet gotten in report form that we can actually look at what's going on. We don't know whether a list that says 10 suspensions, we don't know whether that 10 suspensions is 10 different children or if it's one suspended 10 times. And that's it's a huge difference. It's also a huge thing for us to not know. And we have to get that information. We have to insist that our staff gives us that information broken down so that we can look at what's going on there. Is it that we are not effectively working with individual students who are having continual problems, or is it multiple students? And we really have to find that information to know what to do next.
This is really, really a tough issue, I think, for all of us that are on the board. I think that sometimes we look at, I look at this It's so easy to look at it as a racial issue. And I think that it's just wrong to look at it that way. I think it's more of an economic issue. And then at this simultaneously, I just go back to my observation that teachers are the key to this. They've got to understand the cultures that these kids come from. They've got to be sensitive to these differences that different kids show in the classroom. That's a part of the educational process for our staff. And so I think we're doing that. I think that it's a constant thing that needs to take place. There's a lot of responsibility that needs to take place out there in the family. Okay? It's not all on the school.
The data that we have from the most recent report is certainly incomplete. It does show that there's been some positive gains in some different areas with the Disparities Task Force, but there's certainly some more traction to go. I think part of it goes to what I said earlier in terms of we don't have enough minority teachers in our school system and enough racial mirrors in our school system. I think also we need to have more engagement I think we need to have more engagement directly with that task force, with our school board. Right now we have one member on the school board that is serving on that, and she's doing a fantastic job. But I think there should be some more direct interaction between the school board and that task force. And then also, I have a lot of hope for restorative practices, and as I've walked around the community and talked to different administrators and teachers, what I hear is they have a lot of hope for it. I also consistently hear that they don't feel like we're doing enough to implement it well. And I think there needs to be a real concerted effort and an overarching strategic plan that says we're going to follow best practices, because restorative practices are not new to Knox County. They've been done in other places, and we need to follow those models.
As far as the why, which is the first part of this, why do we think this happens? It's hard to say why, because it may be something that's going on in school. It may be something that's going on at home. So the why is the difficult part in finding out that. All right, and as the front lines, what I would see hitting it head on is, like you said, the teachers that are there, they're seeing what's going on. So the way that we fix it with the disparities of education and the program that they have, I think that each child or each situation or whatever is going on with this statistic and that statistic, whoever it is, each one is a different case that we have to handle differently because each child is different. And I think we need each school to partner up and make sure that they're communicating with the disparities of education and let them know what they're seeing so they can feed back to each other and come up with a specific plan that may be different for Carter than it is for Hardin Valley. So I think we have to address each issue. You know, it may be hard at times, but I think having a better plan than just the blanket plan is great, but I think we may have to do some one-on-one focus on some of these issues.
Okay, now I'm back to Jennifer and Kyle. The next question. Teacher working conditions are student learning conditions. How do you plan to support our newer, less experienced teachers as they begin their careers?
There are a lot of really good ways that Knox County Schools helps to support new teachers as they come in. There are mentors within their schools. There are mentors within departments. KCEA has some great mentor programs for new teachers, not to get with an experienced teacher, but for new teachers to come together and discuss the experiences that they are having at their own schools. And I was really glad they let me come to one of those meetings and talk with them, because they were very, very open with each other and with me about different challenges that they were facing. And I think those kinds of things, for new teachers, having someone else who is doing the exact same thing, whether it's at your school or some other place in the county, that you can come together and talk to about those frustrations. And, well, here's a problem I've had. Oh, well, here's what I did when I faced that problem. It makes a huge difference in how they feel supported and how they feel that they have somebody that they can go to.
The mentoring process is just absolutely critical for new teachers. So I think we are doing a good job with that. It's pretty much so in terms of, the structures or whatever. a new teacher's got to they've got to have some kind of real close relationship with some other teacher in their area. Many times a department can work to mentor, and the more types of structural things like that offer support and real, what we would call real collaboration, which collaboration, that's an easy term to throw out there, but so many teachers don't have time. They're all the stuff they have to do, they just don't have time to really, engage with other people. So we really need to provide more time so that teachers can really collaborate and mentor.
Yeah, I'll echo some of the things that have already been said. Obviously, mentoring, I think, is a huge part of that. I think it's not just something to be thinking about with our newer teachers, it's also our existing teachers. And I think we need to have more supports in our classrooms. I think we need to have the ability to have more TAs that are well paid and not just making $17,000 a year to be able to support our teachers. Because the reality is that whether or not you're a new teacher or a seasoned teacher, if the environment is not healthy, you're not going to stay in it long. And you might last 5 years or less time than that. But ultimately, I think it comes down to creating spaces where our teachers can be honest and vulnerable. Because I think sometimes teachers feel like if they are too honest, it'll be met with impunity. And we don't need to have those kinds of spaces. We need to have spaces where our teachers can be honest and vulnerable, share what their struggles are, and then get the support that they need.
Well, I think what we need to do, or what would be great to do, on a school level, I've said it before, I think it starts in the school, the school administration, and then it trickles up or trickles down to us and them. But I think there needs to be, like they say, mentoring, a program of some sort, if you want to call it that, to where that teacher gets acclimated to what she's getting ready or he's getting ready to do, this new career that they've started. Just like any other career that you start, there's a learning curve there that you got to do. So I think the support, not just from one, whether it just be one teacher that they're partnered with, but I think from several different teachers, give them a little bit of perspective and give them the support from the administration to say, hey, if you got issues, come to me. And the same thing for support from us. I think they need to know that we're here to help them, and their staff is there to help them. They have avenues to talk to people to try to figure out things to do to make it the best scenario for them to move forward and teach the kids.
Knox County is losing a tremendous amount of teachers before 10 years. So we've got to do some of the things that's been talked about, and mentoring at the school and at the department level obviously is great. Having support programs, and even especially since I have experience in middle and high school, letting some of these younger teachers maybe have lower class sizes and so forth. I know that 30 years ago, I had a good friend just got out of college, and she was certified from kindergarten through high school, math teacher, West High School, friends last week. I need a teacher. You know anybody? I sent her over there. He hired her like that. She had 5 just totally low-level math classes out of 6 periods. She quit before 6 weeks, and I've always felt bad. I've ruined her career. Anyway.
Tony will start this next round. The question: attitudes towards education attitudes towards education arguably begin in the home. What can be done to increase parent-guardian engagement?
Well, it absolutely is critical. That's really a good question. I think it's indicative of the society that we don't have more engagement. The pressures on families. I really don't know how to answer that. It is absolutely critical. The responsibility that has to be on parents to help their kids do what they need to do, I really don't know. I really don't know how we increase parent stuff, given sort of the way society is right now. So I'm interested to hear what these other folks have to say about it.
Right now, I'm getting the privilege to work in a 3-year process through the Women's Fund of East Tennessee. And there's 8 network organizations in that. And our whole work is to help elevate the narrative around post-secondary education for especially our women and girls. What we found in our research is across East Tennessee, women and girls are told the message, you don't need to go above your raising. Just settle. And I think we need to combat that in every space. And part of that is helping shift the narrative and letting people know about the opportunities that they have. And specifically in the home, I think we need to be able to meet our parents where they are. The reality is parents across the community have different amount of capacity, time, knowledge, and skill to have those conversations in their homes. So we need to make sure that we're meeting our parents in their spaces to be able to help equip them. And I think one suggestion that I heard recently when I went to Dallas is they now started having and it was a lower income school, they have the PTA actually meeting in the youth development organization that does after school because the kids are already there. So you're just meeting the parents where they are to have those conversations.
That is a really great question, and some parents, it is what it is. Some parents don't want to have anything to do with it, and that's hard on the child, and it's hard on educators to bridge that gap if they don't. But what I feel like we could do is set up some type of program through the guidance counselors, let the teachers know, hey, if you think this needs to be addressed or this child's having issues and I think it's coming from home, I think we need to get a program involved, almost like an outreach program that starts in the school and then kind of coupled with what he said, do things that are after school programs where the kids are already at to try to draw those parents in to get their feedback because like me, I want to know what's going on in my kids' class and things are going, but some just don't. And I feel like if we make it a little bit more accessible for them in their eyes, because they are busy, we all got lives and we're doing this and that, and it's hard sometimes. So I think the accessibility to bridge that gap is what we need to address. And, you know, that's just, I think that would be a good way to start, is trying to come up with a program through the guidance department to maybe get that orchestrated to do the outreach for it.
Well, obviously, parent involvement, I mean, if you look at where I taught for years and retired from, Bearden High School, I always had students that did achieved above average on standardized testing. I'd like to think it was me, but basically, you know, the big difference there was parent involvement and having resources, and I think we just got to do, I don't know what can be done, but do a better job of encouraging parents to be involved in workshops and just teaching parents and let parents supporting each other.
Our definition of engagement really matters here. If we're thinking about engagement as helping with homework and helping with discipline, that's not necessarily the kind of engagement that's going to bring folks in to be engaged. Parent engagement is something as small as having donuts for dads in the morning one morning, bringing the parents in, helping the parents feel welcome, helping the parents feel that they are part of that school and part of the partnership in working with the students. So it's not necessarily something that has to be structured and tracked and all of those things. Parent engagement is just communicating with parents. So having something just not structured, but just open and welcoming is the first part of parent engagement. Letting parents know that you want them there. Letting parents know that you need them there. Letting parents know that you welcome them there.
I'll try this next question, Daniel. What, if any, specific actions would you take to address cultural competency and implicit bias?
Yeah, I've had actually several conversations just in the last 3 days about this. And I don't think there's any consensus on what the right approach is. I've heard from my African-American friends and Caucasian friends both that have varying levels of agreement with how successful it is. One of the things that I fundamentally believe, though, is with those types of issues, it's very hard to get somebody interested in it when you force it on them. There's so many things that I've learned and grown in my life, and it's because there was a want to. And I think that whatever we're doing around cultural competency, that we have to take that into consideration. Because the reality is you cannot force somebody to be more culturally competent. But I think we need to offer that for those people who are on that journey and want to take that journey, because it is important, but you're not going to force people to go there.
That's a really good question, and I'm going to do my best here. The cultural competency and the bias, I mean, like Daniel said, I mean, I just really don't know how to approach this one just because I've not really thought about it much or have had it asked to me. I think communication is key if there is a problem that comes up. You know, I think that's the first thing is addressing if there is an issue. And I really don't know. I'm not sure how. I'm going to have to research this one and educate myself a little bit more on how we could address those issues, because we got to be open and welcoming, and we just need to be educated and help people, you know, the best that we can on that.
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
We just, you know, listen and learn and get feedback from everybody.
I think I agree that when we force something on people, they are automatically resistant, even if it might be something that they're very open to. And while I support cultural competency and cultural competency training, when we call it competency, we're automatically assuming an incompetence coming in. And I think that it causes people to be put off before they even get there. So looking at the way we are presenting issues is very important to help bring people in. If we were looking at cultural understanding, that would sit better with a lot of people than that automatic assumption. And yes, it is because we are culturally incompetent. But you don't go and say, hey, you're incompetent, we're going to make you competent. That's not the way to get to people, even if they are.
I take a little different approach to this one also. I think that cultural competency, the way it's been structured, is kind of off-putting to some people. Certainly, there's been resistance. I think that what we really need to focus on is how much we're similar, how much we're alike. We all want the same things for our kids. We all have the same basic set of values, what we really think are important. And I think it's much more important for us to emphasize the things that bring us together and make us the same than it is to try to work out some set of problems that really emphasize our differences.
Okay, great. Adam, you'll start. Next one. The question, what specific plans or proposals would you support to increase teacher pay?
I support teacher pay any day of the year. Our teachers are underpaid for the job that they do. Okay, any proposal, it may be allocation of funds, it may be new funds, wherever we can get the funds is what we need to do. And it's not just for me, it's not just for teachers, it's for staff across the board. Our teachers are underpaid, the janitorial people, cafeteria, everybody, those are our ground troops, and for the job that they're doing, I feel that they annually need to get an increase of pay. So I feel like that's something that we always need to put up toward the top of our priorities when it comes to budgeting, to make sure that we have that there so they can be constantly increasing and staying in tune with other teachers across the state and nation. So any support proposal to get that fundraising for those teachers raised, I will support.
Knox County ranks probably from, I guess, according to what you read, 30th to probably maybe 40th in teacher pay. And we're the third largest system in the state, and probably looking at the statistics, probably third in ability to pay. You know, we had a pretty good pay increase in the last budget, but what happens, and if you've been around a while, you get that big raise or supposed big raise, and then the next 5-10 years you get nothing. So I think you've got to set a goal of reaching a
I guess, adequate salary for teachers and others within 5 years. And so it shouldn't be just one year and then nothing for the next 10 years.
This is something that costs no money. When we changed our evaluation system several years ago, we went from new teachers being observed 3 times a year and then having those 3 observations worked into an evaluation for the year. And that happened for 3 years, and then it could happen anytime with circumstances as they went on. We jumped right from that kind of system into 4 or 6 complete and full huge evaluations per year. So from 3 observations that made up an evaluation to 4 or 6 full evaluations with 65 different rubric points to hit. It's a massive amount of work for principals, and they had to have more hands to be able to do it. They had to have master teachers and lead teachers and more assistant principals. If we had a reasonable evaluation system, we wouldn't need all those extra administrators, and that money could be freed up.
That's the main talking point that I have for the campaign. It's the evaluation system. So just to follow on her, there's no telling. I could not estimate what amount of money is assigned to the bureaucracy which is involved with this evaluation system. And it's illustrative also of just my saying is, the folks downtown in the AJ building, they've never seen a program that they didn't fall in love with. And we've got a $750 million budget, essentially. And so there's internal things like this, structurally, that we could do that could make a huge difference about money going towards teachers. Thank you.
As a person who runs a nonprofit, I know what it means to be lean and also try to be effective at the same time. And I think one of the things that we have to do and continue to do always is we need to look for anything that's duplicate service in our funding, anything that's a misuse, anything that needs to be reallocated. So I think that's one thing, is we got to figure out where are we using money that we don't need to be using money and putting it into the places that we really need to be putting it into. And the reality is, if our teachers are not making self-sufficiency standard wages in Tennessee or anywhere else, that's should not be happening. The reality is, we often say that our students and our young people are our future, but actually our teachers are our future. Because without our teachers educating our young people, where are our teachers or where are young people going to end up? So we've got to be really intensive about this and making sure that we're getting our teachers the pay that they need, so that way they can be sustained.
Thank you. All right, Dan will answer this last question. So this will be the last question of the night before closing statements.
Who's first this time?
Leo.
Okay.
Gotcha, yeah.
I finally figured it out here. All right, the question. Is there a current direct communications link between the local school board and local state legislators? If not, can one be created?
I'm not aware of one, but again, that would be a top priority if I was on the school board, is constantly being in contact with all of local legislators, finding out in advance what bills will affect education, informing them, putting pressure on them to, for example, any kind of thing that, for example, testing. There's an overemphasis on testing. This comes from the state. The board cannot do anything about it if the state mandated. We need to get to these legislators and get them to change the law where we're not doing all this overemphasis on testing.
I guess technically I'm that link. I'm our legislative network representative from the board to our legislators. I have a conference call every Friday with our lobbyists who work with our legislature too. And we also have a day on the Hill each year when our board members go with the state board of education, with our state school boards association, and visit with our legislators and talk about issues. And so they have that whole day listening to school board members who have come to talk to them. We also have legislative breakfasts and lunches at different times in different places when we're able to talk about issues like that. And I travel back and forth to Nashville throughout the legislative session so that when something is happening and there's new legislation coming down, they see my face there in that committee meeting, and they know that Knox County is paying attention.
Jennifer does a great job keeping the board informed. It's really important also for us individually on the board, I think, to develop relationships with our legislators. And so that's one of the things that I find that legislators have so much that a lot of times just this educational component, it's easy to get this thing pushed to the side. And so it takes us to be in communication with them sort of on some kind of constant basis and building that relationship. And I think that's the way we influence them more than, just sort of the typical email or whatever. So it's just real important to have relationships with specific people, especially, and people on educational committees within the legislature, and I think some of us do that.
Jennifer did a great job outlining the facts of the way the board works with our legislature, but at the end of the day, I think if you don't have your hand on the handle yourself, you've got to be the one pressuring the people to pull the lever. And so I think at the end of the day, we need to have our school board fully engaged with our legislators and our county commissioners. We need to be in their ear, but we need to be in their ear where we're going to get something done and help build some consensus. It's going to take partnership and collaboration. But more than that, too, we've got to be fully informed. I mean, the last thing we need to be doing and pushing our legislators or commissioners is to not be informed. And that's the onus of every individual board member, to make sure that we're engaged, that we're up to date on what's happening, that we're going to Nashville when there's opportunities to do that, and we're engaging our leaders here back in Knoxville when they're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that's been said. We got to have participation. We got a line of communication that's set up. The program is set up for Jennifer to be in communication and relay it back and forth. And we also got to be tenacious. We don't have to settle. All right. If we see a problem within our school system, we need to make sure that those legislators know, and that's what she's there for. And we need to, as a board, collaboratively say, we need to make sure we need to continue to push, not just let it get pushed to the side. Because I feel like that happens a lot of times. Like they were saying, that it's easy to push away just an education question because they're on the grander, bigger stage there. But that doesn't mean that we have to settle. So I just feel like just continuing doing what's set up and was working, and just continue to pressure and push and communicate amongst ourselves, and just continue to fight for our school system.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who asked those questions. We'll now start again with Jennifer for our closing remarks from each candidate.
I appreciate everyone being here today. It takes a lot to come out in the cold and the rain, and it's very important. It's important that you are engaged and that you feel that you can come and hear what candidates are saying, but what's also important is that you go back and share what candidates have said and talk to folks, talk to your neighbors, talk to your families, talk to people about what you heard so that they can call and ask us questions too. Help folks around you to be more informed. We've got all these school board members sitting up here. We should have everyone in all of these districts here. And it's only because they don't understand the importance. So whatever you can do when you leave here to go out and help people understand how important it is for them to be involved and for them to pay attention and for them to listen and for them to ask questions. Please do that.
Thank you all for coming tonight. I see a lot of people out here that I know and have had experience with, and just do appreciate your all's interest. I was actually surprised to see this many people that would show up tonight. I was afraid it was just going to be us and 4 or 5. But thank you for that. Thanks to the League for sponsoring this and putting it on. The questions were really hard, I thought. I was really glad to see them come to an end. And so, but again, I hope you all, thank you for being engaged. Engage your people and find your candidates' support and go out there and support them. Thanks.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's really an honor to be with you all. As somebody who never lived in one place more than a year before I came to Knoxville to go to college, this is home. And I've done everything I can do over the last 12 years to try to help my home become a better place, and I want to keep doing that. And for me, it's now time to start seeing what we can do to impact systems, because we all know, even though as individual families and constituents in this community, we all have our individual challenges, but we have to recognize that our systems impact all of us. And so I'm honored at the opportunity, and we'll see what happens through the election, but I commit to continue to give myself to this community long beyond this opportunity on school board. So
I want to say thank you as well to everybody that come out. This is an amazing opportunity for me and an extremely humbling experience to be a part of this whole process of running for office, hearing from the people and hearing what they want to see and their needs, their issues that they have. That's what I want to do, and that's what I want to be, that ear to hear the problems, and I want to relay that on up the chain, because like I said earlier, as times change, we have to change with them. We don't have to settle. We can push and fight for our school system, for our teachers, for our staff. So that's my thing, a new vision for a new time. And I just want to continue making our school systems grow. The questions were great. Some of them were hard. It's awesome to me because now I have more to learn and more to research. My wife always gets on to me and says, I talk too long. Thankfully, this lady has kept us all in check tonight. So just thank you guys. I appreciate this opportunity.
I think Knox County schools are very good schools, but I think we can be a great school. And I think that Knox County gets more bang for the buck from our teachers, our teachers' aides, and school employees, and any system in the state. You know, as I talked about earlier, studies show that affluent communities that have more parent involvement, have the needed resources, their test scores are higher than other communities. I know that back when I remember as a kid living in the projects over in Western Heights, looking at families struggling to make ends meet, and they loved their kid just as same as everybody else, but you know, they just didn't have the means to get them the best education. I think all our students deserves a great education, and I want to be an advocate for those kids.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the candidates, and of course, thank you to all of you for participating in this forum together. I hope that all of you have learned something, and as the candidates said, they've learned something too. Please stick around. They'll be here to speak. There's materials on the back tables. If you have any other questions, you'd like to get to know them, say hello, please do that. Thank you so much, and have a safe drive home. Thank you.